is. It's a moon. It's a full moon. It's taken 14 hours to print this. Actually, to be fair, that looks pretty good. I can't wait to put a light in it. Ooh, cool. Anyway, there we go. Moon. Right, let's look at that. Oh, and it's sort of translucent. You can see my fingers through it. Cool. Awesome. Moony, 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 moony. Moony, 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 moony. Okay, so my 3D printer has made a moon. Fantastic, and I can't wait to put a lamp in it. I've got the perfect lamp for it. It's a lamp with a passive infrared sensor and a light sensor on it. It's battery powered, and it has an LED in it. All I've got to do is take a saw to it and a soldering iron to it perhaps, and bodge it together and make a lovely little motion activated lamp for the house. Now, what I have got for you, which is a lovely little treat. I went to visit a mate of mine, Richie, the other day, and he and I sat down and we had a chat about 3D printing, and Richard shared with me some of his thoughts and some of his experiences, and he's got a lot more experience than I. So rather than me talk you through all of this lamp build, you can watch that in the video, and you can listen to Richard and myself talking about 3D printing. So hello, and good news, Richard's here with me.
Hi.
You have a wealth of 3D printing experience under your belt. So you've printed ABS.
Yeah, ABS, nylon, yeah, PLA, all those sort of things.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier. Richard very kindly let me have a look at some of his printers that he's got at home here, and one of the printers that you had some special support fibers in it.
That's hips. Hips.
Yeah.
So if I want to print in ABS and have some kind of support that I need to remove in a place that I can't, I use hips as my support media, which is dissolvable in a chemical called limonene, which smells like oranges.
So this is fantastic. If you think about it, so just to paint the picture, you've printed this part, and one print head is printing the plastic, the other print head is printing support layers or support structures
in a different material
that allow you to be able to print plastic over the top of that, and then you dump it in a bath of
this limonene.
Juice.
It's almost like dumping it in a glass of orange juice.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You leave it for about 24 hours, and the stuff becomes it just starts to dissolve and turn into a goo that you can just literally wash away.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, it's fantastic. So maybe at some point I might have a tinker with that. But what are some of the things that you've printed? Anything particularly complex that you've printed, or sort of all?
I've printed all sorts of things.
Enclosures,
wheels for my dishwasher. There's all sorts of things. I mean, there was a typical one the other day where I was trying to bleed the clutch on I think it was a Mitsubishi, and it's just impossible. So I printed a cap that fitted on the master cylinder of the clutch fluid, that used my brake pressure bleeder kit to pressure bleed it.
That's
and I mean, it worked in a minute.
That's
but
brilliant.
I just could not bleed the clutch
without that. Yeah, exactly. There are some things that you know. All of a sudden, I'm seeing 3D printing now as a solution to many little issues I have in the house. For instance, the wife is saying, "Okay, I really want a toothbrush holder,"
well,
and
you go and print one, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. We could go to Asda and spend £5 on something, or we could just go ahead and print one for 50p.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's exactly what I do. You know, if I can, I'll print it. You know, there's all sorts of parts of my car that are now 3D printed. One of the complexest ones I did was the squirters for my headlights. I printed a whole new squirter assembly with the spring and the thing that pops it up and all of that. just for fun.
And this sits underneath a little cover underneath the back. It pops up out of the that's cover. Just fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, there's things like that. The plot clock was printed.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. So far, I've been using FreeCAD to develop, which is a GNU license-free software to put together 3D models. I've also been using something called Cura that does all of the slicing. Now, I don't know if this is all basic stuff, but what do you use?
Very similar stuff. There's a few things that I've used in the past. Slicer used to be the main sort of slicing program that we used back in the day. Although there's other ones now that I think are far better. I still use Slicer for most of my stuff because all my settings are in it. But it has its inherent problems. I believe internal holes come out at the wrong size, and there's things like that you need to think about.
Okay. So what CAD package do you use?
I used to use SolidWorks a lot, but I don't have a license for that anymore. So I myself use FreeCAD because it's simple.
Oh, that's actually really nice to know. Yeah.
So
okay,
so
good,
I mean,
good.
I learnt FreeCAD, but I mean it was just because I knew SolidWorks anyway. It wasn't too bad. There's another one I use for some tricky stuff, which is called Onshape, which is an online CAD package, which is very heavily based on SolidWorks, I believe. But I can take a SolidWorks model and import it and export it as something else without having to use SolidWorks. So all my old SolidWorks files I can still use, even without SolidWorks, which is nice. And it can do all sorts of clever stuff. I've put threads on things where I cannot do that in FreeCAD. It's just near on impossible unless you're some kind of Python guru.
I've watched some guys putting threads together in FreeCAD, and it doesn't look particularly easy.
Within 3 or 4 clicks, I've put a thread on something I've drawn in FreeCAD that I've just imported into Onshape and gone, here's the thread, and it's done it for me. I can take any STL model and just put a thread on it. It's quite a handy tool just to be able to just to have, and it's for free. Although you do have to nowadays make your work public.
Okay. So it's everything you design goes into the public domain.
Well, when I started, it used to have an amount of private area, but over the time they've just removed your private area. I have some private files that are legacy from back when I had my account when it first started. But if I do any edit on that now, it all becomes public again.
Okay.
So that's the only thing I found. But
what about, you mentioned earlier a piece of software that runs on a Raspberry Pi called OctoPrint.
OctoPrint I use on my printers. It's just a print server. That's all it does. You can fire it. You can fire an STL file, and it will slice it for you if you've got a slicer installed on it. Or you just fire the G code at it. It will remember it forever, so you can just reprint that print if you want to.
And it has a webcam option as well. Doesn't
yes,
it?
It's got a webcam option, so you can monitor it from afar, and it will also time lapse everything that's going on. So every job that I do on my printer, it just gets time lapsed anyway, and it deals with that and just gives me a JPEG file at the end of it. That I can just upload to YouTube or do what I want to do with it.
Yeah, fantastic. So a question for you, Rich. So I've not yet pulled any plastic out of my print head. I've not changed the spool, I've not changed the reel, I've not pulled the filament or taken the media out, however you want to describe this. So you had a fantastic recommendation just now. Go ahead and tell us again. How's that work?
Okay, when I first started, I just thought, right, okay, what we do is pull it out of the print head, and invariably I'd end up with it either snapping on me or it not coming out, and I'd end up in so much trouble. So the way I do it now, and it works every time.
And you get that big lump of filament that's stuck inside the print head, and then you've got to pull the print head apart. And
I ended up with blow torches cleaning the heads out and things. So it took hours.
Yeah.
So now every time I ever remove my filament, all I do is I heat my extruder up to a little bit hotter than I'd normally use for the media. So if it's ABS, I'd be 240, PLA around about 200-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. And then all I do is on my drives with my extruders, I've got a little
thumb squeeze,
or something that I push on that releases the tension from the drive.
Yep.
So I press on that, and then my filament is free from the stepper motor.
Yep.
I then push it down, so I'm
Okay.
actually squirting, you know, media out of my head.
Yep.
As it's squirting out nicely and freely, I just pull it up really, really quickly.
Right, okay, so the deal then is get the print head to about 200, or
you're
depending
PLA,
on,
yeah.
so if you're PLA, print head at around 200, get it nice and warm, start release the
thing, so
capstan
with one
drive,
hand,
release
yeah.
the capstan drive, push down
on
on the media, and then pull up, as soon as you've got media coming out of the print head,
Yeah.
pull up really quickly on the
just releases every time.
everything just
Yeah.
cleanly comes out of the print head. Well, Richard, thank you very much for giving us your wealth of knowledge and experience in 3D printing in plastics.
Well, it's only a basic.
No,
it's
yeah,
not
but,
really a wealth, I
you're
would have said.
far more advanced than I am at the moment.
I hit all sorts of problems with different materials, nylon, etc., where, you know, I'm trying to print a part and the thing just pops off the bed all the time.
Have you ever tried any of the flexible?
No, I haven't. I've been tempted.
Like phone covers and things like that.
There are I've forgotten what it's called, Ninja or something. Flex, I think, is one of them that I've been tempted to have a play with, but I haven't done as yet.
Anyway, Richard, thank you very much for taking time out to give us share with us your experiences of 3D printing, and long may the day come when I get to your level.
Hey, no problems.
11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, superb.